It's funny, even with Career Club as an entrepreneur, the principle of one, helping people find a career that matters to them, and kind of underlying that is using sales and marketing principles to help people do that. The form that has taken and the underlying technologies continues to evolve based on, where we're seeing people have the most success. So I might have it in my head that this is the right way to do it. Well, it might be the right way for me to do it, but what I learned is like, my clients aren't me, and I need to design and not just be so fixated on only one way to do something, but being open to, are there other ways of doing that? To your earlier point, allow us to accomplish what we set out to do, right? So that didn't change. The mission didn't change.
Right.
How we accomplish the mission, I'm very open to. I'm agnostic on that. Like, I just care about what works and it helps people. And in the same way, you want to see your project on time, achieving its business objective that was originally stated. So I think that's cool. One of the other areas, Kevin, that I think is so fascinating about what you're doing is in this area of analytics. And you talked about, are these HR things that we're doing, are they actually working, and how would we know? So do you mind just sort of casting a little bit more about your vision for analytics and then how it's being deployed there at Scripps?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been in HR for 25 plus years now. And, there's a lot of stuff that we do because we have to do it, right? It's a company based in the United States of America. There's rules and regulations, and we have to pay taxes. There's just certain things you have to do to remain compliant, right? You have to do government reporting, et cetera. And that's all stuff that, you want to do that in the most efficient, effective, let's be honest, cheap way that you can possibly do it and meet the, whatever that requirement is. And I've spent, a good portion of my career focused on things like that. Right. And so you're always looking for, is there a cheaper way? Is there a faster way, a better way, more efficient, whatever? Because what you want is your employees, you want your people. In my case, I want my people focused on more strategic things. I want them focused on things that are actually going to drive our business forward, or help people that are trying to drive our business forward, like help them help our business. Right. And so as we look at HR programs like talent management, leadership development, learning and education, even talent acquisition to an extent, even though there's a lot of compliance related stuff in talent acquisition. What can we do? What data can we provide to show that what these programs are doing are actually driving the business forward and actually having a business impact? If you look at training, and every industry is going to be different on this, but a good portion of the training that any company does is just compliance. You got to do the handbook training once a year, for people in, industries where you have to be certified to do certain things. And maybe that comes up every 1 or 2 years. You have to do training in order to do that. So a lot of the training that we do is just compliance related. It's stuff that we have to do. And then there's this whole other set of training that's done to better enable salespeople to do their job better, or, whatever that is. And how can we measure that to show that that's actually having an impact and we don't need to pivot? Every year these folks go to leadership during budget season. And I used to tell our talent acquisition person all the time, I feel horrible for you sitting in front of leadership every year with a budget, because you're like, look, we've got this many roles to fill, and I've got this much cost in order to do it. And, she's getting pelted with questions. I'm like, wouldn't it be nice if I could actually show, hey, look, the quality of hire for the people that my internal team is bringing in is here, right? Help me help you tell that story so that you don't get pelted with questions every budget season. And basically, it felt like she was fighting for, survival every budget season. And there's other areas like that around talent management. I don't want to do these things just because everyone else is doing them. I don't want to do these things just because, in some cases it's table stakes. Like, well, if we don't have a talent program, then, people are going to leave for companies that do. Well, that's great. And that may be true. But can we actually show that people that go through whatever these programs we're designing, that they're more productive, that they're more engaged, that they stay longer, whatever it is, right? And so that measurement of the effectiveness of HR programs is real passion of mine and something that we've, we're stepping into it and we're trying to figure out what the right thing is. And, as we're changing as a company too, so that every time you have big change, it can kind of reset some things as well, which is fair. And we have to work through that. The other side of that too is, again, telling people, telling our leadership something about our people that they don't know. Yes, I know we have 5,600 employees. Thanks, Kevin, for that. Right. I know that roughly they're distributed, this way across the country, and so many are in, this role versus that role. That's great information just to have. It'll come in handy every now and then. But tell me something about our people that I don't know. Where's our highest turnover? Is it people that have just joined? Is it people that have been here between 5 and 6 years? Tell me about turnover for people that have experienced a mobility event, whether that was a promotion or a move to another market. Does that increase or decrease their turnover? Tell me, as we did with one recent executive, tell me about the turnover for a particular role based on where they are in the salary range. Where's that sweet spot of the salary range where turnover actually is dropping versus maybe it's a little higher here or lower? Because Bob, it's so funny, things that seem intuitive. Well, if you don't pay them, they're leaving. Well, maybe that's true, but that's not true in all cases.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you have to let the data kind of guide where you go. You can go in with a hypothesis. You can go in with an assumption. But again, I keep going back to that word, like, be humble. Let the data take you to the next step, and be willing to say, what, even though, I've been in HR for 25 years and that seems intuitive, it's actually not the case here. And why isn't that the case? Now let's go find out why that's not the case. Right. So it's those kinds of things that really excite me about insights and what the information that we can provide to the company, because it's not just about, and I think it was you that had the phrase, it's not just what it is. Why does that matter? And what should we do about it? That's
what, so what, and now what?
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's it. And so the bigger issue here for our HR friends who might be listening to this is, the ever-present quest for the seat at the table, right? And I think that what you're doing, Kevin, it's one of the reasons I was so excited to have you on, is this is the prescription. Tell me something I don't already know about the business. What should I do about it? Show me the impact of these programs that are having. The language of business is numbers.
Yeah,
it is. And so did it make us money? Did it save us money? Did it mitigate some kind of a risk? Those are sort of the three main value buckets that something's going to fall into, an initiative would fall into. Use the example of salespeople. That's an easy one, right? They sold more stuff. That's pretty simple. But when you look at like some of the retention numbers that you're talking about, or engagement numbers, productivity numbers, and hey, we did this and it had this impact, guess what? It's going to be a whole lot easier for the talent lady to get funding for something when she's got data behind her to say, well, it's just not because it feels good or it's the right thing to do, or, this is the latest thing that I read about, that we should be doing too. Mm-hmm. So no, here's the data that just supports it. And like you say, let the data guide you. And I think that it would be truly transformational for more HR executives to be guided by data, to be armed with data, and to really be speaking, the language of business, because we talk about people are our most important assets and all that kind of stuff. Right. But it's really kind of taking that analytical lens into it to be able to provide back to leadership, exactly what you said again, like, tell me something I don't know, or I have a hypothesis. Can you help me suss this out?
Right.
So, and then lastly, for people that didn't quite catch it, it's what, so what, and now what? Because we could say, hey, 25% of our turnover is coming from this employee band or the salary band or length of tenure, functional, whatever it is. Okay, so what? Like, should I care about that?
Right.
Is this important? Is it affecting the business in some way or the other? Well, actually, yeah, because it's preventing us from doing something that's very measurable. Great. If that's the case, what should I do about it? And
Yeah.
I think this is the little bit, on the one side, you talk about humility. I think another piece of this is courage, and having the courage
Yeah.
to stand up and say, I'm going to take a stand on something. I believe, based on the data, this is what we should do. And not everybody's got that personality type, but that's the beauty of data, is you've got a very firm foundation to stand on, rather than it feels like, it seems like. It's like, no, it is. And
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Two things to that. One, so in addition to some of the tools that we've created and dashboards we created one that calculates the cost of turnover. And the great thing about it, because you ask any consultant, what's the cost of turnover? I guarantee you'll hear anything from 25% to like 150%. And I'm like, okay, so we're never going to agree on what that number is. But what we did with our dashboard is the executive that's using it can plug in any number they want. If you only want to give me 10%, fine, 10%, plug in 10%, and it'll tell you what the cost of turnover is. And what people don't understand is, even at a company like Scripps, which doesn't have, our turnover is not crazy high by any stretch. But when you're talking about certain roles, it can be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars a year as the cost of turnover, just giving me 25%, which is the minimum, what you would hear from pretty much any consultant. So that's the so what, right? Okay, so turnover's X, so what? Well, so what? It's costing you $500,000 a year to fill just that one role. The now what, an interesting story. So I have a friend and somebody that we still do business with. He owns an analytics consultancy in Austin. And one of the great stories that he tells, and I know he wouldn't mind me stealing it, is he was doing work with a hospital, and they were talking about nurses and the cost of turnover and what they should do. And he actually showed them through analysis that they would be better off having three nurses sit on the bench and do nothing and pay them than you would be waiting for somebody to leave, trying to fill it, because the overtime cost that you pay while you're trying to fill those roles. And he knew how long it took to fill over time because you have that data. He actually showed you'd be better off with three just sitting at home waiting for you to call saying, hey, I need you now, financially. And so, again, something that you would never think is true, but in this case, financially, it's true because, again, that was a high turnover position, and they were, it took, in their case, 6 to 8 weeks to fill minimum. That's 6 to 8 weeks of overtime that I'm paying people to fill that role, while we wait. So, yeah, the data to me is, and that model that you laid out is so critical, from an HR standpoint, to be able to, we're people, and people are, a little squishy in terms of it's not just a number, but there are things that we can point to that show the value of, data and data literacy and storytelling from a people perspective.
Well, actually, that's a perfect segue into, I alluded to in your introduction that you speak at conferences. You were recently at Unleash.
Yeah.
And what was the topic there, and what were you sharing? Then we'll kind of just dig into that some.
Yeah. So the panel that I was on with two wonderful HR leaders from different industries, different parts of the country, was basically what should future HR leaders know about themselves. And it was kind of the idea behind it was what other kind of skill sets beyond just your HR knowledge that you have in a vacuum, like what other skills should you consider important as you grow your career in HR? Okay.
And so what would be the top three things that you were suggesting?
Yeah. So, I think, again, given where we are, we're in 2023, but we still feels like in some cases we're coming out of the pandemic. And, one of the questions that the moderator asked us all to consider was, what coming out of the pandemic, what were some things that you either learned about yourself, or do you feel like your organizations relied on HR for maybe that they wouldn't have, which I thought was an interesting take on things. But some things came up like empathy and, where, we need to be kind of the voice of the employee. It's these things were not just business decisions, people's lives were at stake, literally, and figuratively. But in terms of, my kind of general answer to the question, for me, project management, I think you have to have some project management discipline and fundamentals. And that's what's going to allow you not only to succeed in HR, because a lot of what we do is relying on that, but it's going to your own personal credibility. It's going to allow the organization to come to you in the case of like me and say, hey, Kevin, this project in finance and accounting isn't going. Can you help out there? It's like, well, sure. Because again, I don't have to know anything about finance and accounting to know why that project wasn't going well. I didn't know about journal entries or anything like that, right? It was all things that were kind of project and program management fundamentals. I think the other thing that I would throw out there is root cause analysis. One of my favorite quotes, and I'm a big quote guy, and I love them, but one of my favorite quotes is a problem well stated is half solved. And what I found in my career is that a lot of people that come to you with a problem and they'll say, I need help with this. They're not actually, what they stated was the problem isn't actually the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. Mm. And so your ability to really dig down and figure out what is the actual root cause, that I can help you solve. And then the symptoms will take care of themselves. Yep. Right. But, just getting people to kind of weed through and in some cases, it's a lot and people come to you with a lot of baggage because they've been carrying it for years. And so they feel it. And so, not minimizing it, but saying, hey, I understand, but let's get down to what the root is. So I think root cause analysis, which, I kind of throw under project management as well, is really important. And then the last thing for me was kind of what I said earlier is you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I'll never forget a mentor of mine who's now our COO here. Told me a long time ago, Kevin, you're gonna get invited to sit down in rooms and you're gonna walk in like, what the hell am I doing here? Mm-hmm. Like I have no business in this room. And she said, some people in the room may look at you like, what the hell is he doing here? Like what do you have to offer? And, you have to be comfortable enough in your own skin that you were invited here because you have something to offer. And if people have a problem with that, then that's on them, right? You were asked here to do something. And, that always stuck with me. And it doesn't mean you jump in and try to take over right away. It just means I'm here for a reason. There's something I have to offer. And I'm going to offer that as the time presents itself or the opportunity presents itself. Even if it's, again, a topic that I just have no idea. I mean, there was another opportunity where it was around sales compensation. And I'm like, I don't know anything about sales compensation. I've never even been a salesperson, right? But again, that wasn't the issue. The issues were things that we could solve. And so, I think those things are the three that I would point to.
Can I break that down a little bit? Because, as you were talking, I sort of was feeling a little bit of a sequence there. Yeah. So I'm not married to my sequence, but I think you really highlighted some really interesting things. One was a problem well stated is half solved. It may be more reflection of symptoms. Mm-hmm. So kind of first thing is like, well, what's going on in the business? Mm-hmm. And then the next bit was around data literacy. Well, I don't know. Let's see what the data tells us, right? Mm-hmm. Because, I could be in that meeting that you're talking about and someone could have a very loud voice.
Yes.
Literally and figuratively. They could have a title that allows them to command the attention of the room. They just may not be right. Whatever they're saying may just be, that's the way it used to be. That was at their last company, that's what it was. So they're just going to project that's what it is here. But let the data guide you. Then the next bit is, well, based on what the data is telling us, that allows me now to organize a project.
Yes.
To go solve. Well, one, the data will help me get to the root cause of what the thing is, which is your root cause analysis, which then informs, well, then what's the project that goes and tackles that root right? And then because you're solving real business problems that are measurable, how do we know they're measurable? Because they were grounded in data. We already figured, we already know that, right? So, when you are getting these promotions, for me, it's because you're somebody that gets stuff done, right? People can point to things that, and I could say that slightly less elegantly, but the people get promoted are people that get stuff done, right? Because there's always more stuff to be done, and we need people that know how to do that. Mm-hmm. So I would go back to symptoms. Let's look at the data. That will tell us what the root cause of this thing is. Organize a project, execute the project with excellence, and then you probably have the future in HR you're looking for.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because we, GSD, it's kind of what I tell my group, and you can figure out what that stands for. But that's what we do. And you have to do that with excellence. I mean, payroll is a perfect example. I told the group at Unleash, I said, HR professionals, you can't run away from the stuff that you just have to get done, because that's when you talk about payroll and benefits, those are the bottom of the employer hierarchy of needs, right? I mean, those are the base. People can believe in your mission as an employer and as employees, but nobody's volunteering. They're doing this to support their family, and benefits are a portion of that as well. A lot of people work literally just to have the healthcare, and so. We have to realize that, and we have to make sure that stuff is done with excellence, because I guarantee you, I tell people all the time, I said, I'm a magician. I can actually make every single one of your employees forget about every HR initiative right now. Screw up the next payroll. I guarantee they will forget about all your talent initiatives, and they'll forget all about that. All they're worried about is, where's my money? Because I need that in order to live. And so, we have to take those things seriously as well, and not run away from that, because that's the stuff that's going to build credibility for you personally over time, is continually getting that stuff done with excellence, to your point. So, no, I think that's a really critical element as well.
Super helpful. So last thing, because I love talking about talent, this is Career Club, not Job Search Club, and careers take time. One of the things that you were sharing with me in a previous conversation was kind of your take on generalists versus specialists. I was wondering if you could just maybe unpack that for a minute.
Yeah. So, this really hit me more from a coaching perspective, but it applies professionally as well. But I see it a lot with kids, not only because I have a lot of friends with young kids, and they're all doing something. Soccer, basketball, baseball, football, whatever it is. And parents are spending an extraordinary amount of money these days on these things. I mean, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so, I think it really is important for me, and I found it successful, that, I would consider myself very much a generalist. I've tried a lot of different things, and I've honed skills over time, right? That I took a little bit from here and a little bit from there and a little bit from there. And it's all kind of come together to doing what I do now. And certainly, managing a function that has, multiple, tentacles for different things that we do for the organization requires that. And I think it really starts to highlight your abilities as just as a leader, right? And I, years ago when I was, early on in my career, and, look, I had two older brothers that, are among the smartest people I know, just full stop. And so I valued competence more than almost anything, right? And what I've learned over time is competence will get you so far, and competence in a silo will get you real far. But if you're looking to have an impact, truly across an organization, it takes a lot more than competence. And I think that's the stuff where, allow yourself, and parents allow your kids to experience a lot of different things, including failure. It's okay. That's some of the best lessons that Master Yoda said it, the failure a great teacher is, or something. I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but like, it's okay. It's okay if you weren't successful. What can I learn from that? And take that away. So.
When you're interviewing people, and we'll start winding this down here in a sec.
Yeah.
When you're interviewing people and or building your team, what are some of the traits, the qualities that people have that really resonate with you? What are you looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big things I'm looking for is just adaptability. I know what job you're being hired to do, right? And I can read the job description. But I think it's much easier to teach somebody how to do a particular job, or, administer a particular system, or manage a particular process, whatever it is they're trying to do. It's much more difficult to get somebody that, that's going to change over time, or all of a sudden at the same time as you're doing that, we're going to be buying a company, or we're going to be switching systems, or we're going to be are you adaptable enough, and are you comfortable enough with change to kind of manage through that? So, I'm looking for people that have, tell me about changes you've been through, not only professionally, but personally as well. That you can talk about opportunities that you took advantage of that helped you grow as a person. I think the biggest thing, and I tell this to my team all the time, we got to have a sense of adventure. It's just, life's going to take you down a lot of different paths, personally and professionally. Got to have a little bit of a sense of adventure, and everyone's going to have a different comfort level with that. But to me, that's critically important to, as I think about my 16 years here at Scripps and the amount of change we've been through. If you don't have a sense of adventure and kind of a courageous spirit, you're not going to be long for the job.
Well, that's such a great point, because, obviously the rate of change is only accelerating, and there's no reason to believe it's going to slow down or stop. So that ability to embrace it, because, what a psychologist would say is, change is threatening, right? Mm-hmm. And we respond negatively to change because somewhere deep in our reptilian brain is, it's life threatening. So change is bad. But the way you phrase it, which I love, which is, no, it's an adventure. Like, how do you go and embrace what could happen? And is there going to be the chance for failure or some kind of, I'm making air quotes, harm? Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Like, there's no guarantees. Right. But, if everything is a problem, a threat, like that is really going to weigh you down, and you're not going to be very adaptable. Why would you be? Right? Well, I don't want things to change.
Another side of that too, and this comes to us as leaders, right? We have to make sure people understand that they have the appropriate backstops too, right?
Meaning what?
Meaning we're not just going to ask you to take an opportunity and say, well, if you fail, you're fired. Like, why would I do that then? Right? So that's one thing in my career. All the way back, I've always felt like there were people that said, hey, we want you to take this, but we're going to take the time with you to train you. We're going to take the time with you so you learn a different skill set and you learn how to do this the correct way. I could go over so many examples of that in my career, but I never felt like my failure would cost me my job. As long as I was doing things what I was being asked to do, or trying my hardest, I never felt like that. I felt like, people would have my back, and they have. And so I think as leaders, it's one thing to encourage people to be adaptable and take advantage of opportunities and have a sense of adventure, but you're not just pushing them out like, hey, have fun. Don't come talk to me. No, let me help you through this change. Let me help you, through this, learning this new skill set, or learning how to deal with a situation differently than what you've had to do in the past. So I think, we have a responsibility there as well, not only to give those opportunities, but also to make sure that it's still, that they still feel, intellectually safe taking them. And yeah. I think that's super critical.
Well, it is. And super quick anecdote, but we recently had a client that was very successful in their main role. They got tapped by the CEO to go lead a new initiative, which was out of their comfort zone, but they saw the adventure in it and wanted to, do what was helpful to the company. So they said, sure, I'll give that a go. And not too many months into it, the board's like, yeah, we're making a change in strategic direction. That's not something that we really want to pursue anymore. And rather than find a home for this known great performer, it's like, well, that initiative's over, so you're over. Goodbye. Yeah. I mean, my jaw's still on the ground. I'm like, do you know what you guys just let go of?
Right.
like you would fight tooth and nail to go get somebody like that. And yet
Think
you would
about the message that you send to the people that are still there too.
100%. And I'm just like, wow, that was like one of the most short-term things. So when you talk about like letting people know you've got their back, and I'll equip you for success, and we will show appreciation for you being willing to go out on the limb in our
Absolutely.
name for
Yes.
our behalf, right? Like, and not everything works, and that's okay. We learned, and so that's something that we're not going to do any more of. But you're still a highly valued employee. How can we deploy your great strengths in an area that we are focused on now? So, last question. What advice would you give 28-year-old Kevin with the benefit of hindsight?
Well, this is something, and I'm glad that I've practiced this, but I would reiterate it even more, is that you are going to come in contact with a lot of amazing people, on your journey, whether they're your direct supervisor, manager, whether they're coworkers, whether they're people that you meet through. I mean, some of the best people I know are consultants that I've worked with in the past that I've learned so much from. And one of the things that I always committed to doing was I'm going to try to remember one thing, at least one thing from every person that I really, come in contact with. And one of my favorite stories there, and you can see my red pen here, when I was 19, I guess 19, maybe 20. And I was working in the retirement plans group. One of the things that came with that job was I had to write letters to the retirees. And, you take business writing, in school, but what does that really translate to in the real world? And I had obviously no idea. So as I would write these, the lady Marge, who ran the retirement plans group, would take her red pen out, and she would mark up the letters and she'd hand it back to me. And this was before the day of red line and Word. And so she'd hand it back to me and I would retype it, but she would tell me why. Like, this is why you want to say it this way. It's not that maybe in some cases that you were wrong, but you want to say it this way in this type of communication. And so when she retired, I asked her if I could have her red pen. And I still have I have a red pen. So this is from 1997. And I still have the red pen. And it's just kind of my constant reminder for things that I've learned from people in the past. I had another situation where, I told you as a younger, person, I valued competence above everything. Until I realized how important people relationships were. Yes. And being right was secondary to people relationships in a lot of cases, and had a manager that showed just an unbelievable amount of kindness to me as my wife and I were going through a personal situation where she lost her mom. She was 8 months pregnant with our youngest, and she lost her mom. And it was an incredibly tough time for our family. And I had a leader in my group at the time that just showed just an incredible amount of kindness. And it was like, wow, that's what it feels like when you treat people really good. Yes. And from then on, it's like, no, I want to be like that. I want people to remember that. I couldn't tell you whether I thought he was super smart but I remember how he made me feel and how valuable he made me feel in that situation. So, like, what can you take away from those people? Because trust me, I think somebody said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I think there's some truth to that, right? You are going to 20 years later in your career, you're going to find that you're kind of bits and pieces of people that you've allowed influence you over your career. So don't be afraid to take those positive things, even if it's an actual physical memento of that.
Kevin, this is awesome. I know that your team and the people that you are influencing, you're going to be one of those 5 people for a lot of folks who will be better for it. And it's very cool to see you pass along the legacy that you've inherited as you've been through your career. But everything that you've shared today around change management, the importance of building relationships, the role that data plays in making better decisions, and then just this last bit on empathy and caring and all those kinds of things, that at the end of the day, we're people. We're not work producing units. And your team knows when you value them as a person first and a work producing unit second. So this has been phenomenal. I'm so glad that you took a few minutes out of your busy day to share so much great insight with us. So thank you.
Bob, thanks for having me. It was great speaking with you.
Awesome. And everybody who's been listening or watching on YouTube, thank you so much. And again, if there's anything that we can do to be of help to you with any transition employees or personal career coaching, please check us out at career.club. Again, Kevin, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening. Bye-bye.
Take care.